great pleasure to have you with Homecrux today. I am Atesh Sharma, senior writer at Homecrux. How
Okay.
does it feel to be called the color guru? What is the precise definition of color for you?
Well, the color guru part of it is something that other people call you. I don't call myself a color guru, but it's a very complimentary expression. And what a colorist like myself does is to help people arrive at the correct choices for color, whether it be in the interior or the exterior, whether it be commercial, residential, whether it be for a product that you're in development. All of this is very important to have some expertise in, because as we well know, color is a huge influence in the reason that people will buy a particular product.
You have an educational background in design, psychology, and business administration. How has the experience in three varying verticals been for you personally and professionally as well?
Well, it's very important to have a combination of all of those areas because, as we well know, there's the aesthetic aspect of color. We want to
Definitely.
choose colors that people will regard as attractive. And so, what I have done is to do a lot of research on consumer acceptance of color, what it is that they respond to. The psychology of color is very important. The essential meaning of a color and how people will respond and react to it. Of course, the cultural aspect of a color. Does it have a specific meaning within a particular culture? And also color trends and forecasts, because obviously this is important to know if you want a product or an environment that's going to last for a while, for a long time, so that you don't have to redo the color as frequently in an interior. And yet we know that color trends are important in order to look like you're up to date and you're knowledgeable about what the zeitgeist is, as we call it, the German expression, which means what is the mood that is involved in color. And we
Since
look at it from
I'd actually like to stop you over there, since you brought
yeah,
mood into the conversation, how much
yeah.
do you think color plays a role in changing a person's moods and personality, and how do brands use color as an emotional advantage?
Well, there is no question that research tells us that certain colors can evoke certain moods. But we always have to think of that in terms of context, how and where the color is going to be used. So that we have to be cautious about general statements about color. We have to take whatever advice we give to a client. We always have to look at where is it going to be positioned in the marketplace? Who is the target audience? How will they respond to a particular color? And so it's not a question of just generalities. It's also a question we can talk in terms of generalities. Obviously, all over the world, people attach certain shades of green to nature. That's an obvious connection. But how is that relatable in that particular culture, in that particular environment? And is that a positive or a negative response that they have? Now, you asked a question about how companies make use of this and possibly in branding. Obviously, there is a connection to color and emotion and the way that the average consumer will respond to a color in a given situation. So, what we have to do is to acknowledge those essential meanings that are attached to colors and messages, and then think about it in the appropriate context, put it in the positioning that it's going to be in. And that is where our expertise lies. We can help a client arrive at those decisions, which sometimes are not, you may have people working for you within a company who have some expertise in color. We will acknowledge that, certainly. But we try to take in the bigger picture. We look at the large picture, the macro picture, as we call it, of color, and to think of it in terms of today's usage. It's interesting to know about history. It's interesting to know about culture and how people respond based on those facts. But we also have to look at the trend forecast, because today, particularly with a younger marketplace, They are looking online. They are looking at what is going on in Paris, in London, not only in your own country or in the US, but from a world perspective. And that is part of what our job is to do, to bring that worldwide perspective and combine it with the messaging and the meanings of color.
So you are also the go-to person for brands requiring assistance with color choice in their logos, interior design, and more. What are the big names that you have collaborated with or associated with, and what have been the notable highlights?
Well, that is information that is usually kept between the company and myself. So I'm not as comfortable answering that question
Oh, all right.
unless I get permission from the company to do
All right,
that.
no worries. You've been the executive director of the Pantone Color Institute for, I guess, past 38 years now. How do you
Yeah.
reflect on the journey and what is the way forward for you in the near future?
Well, that's an interesting question in that when I started out all those years ago, there were many people who just didn't understand how important color was in the marketplace. So in the beginning, it was a matter of educating people and letting them know that, yes, of course, the shape of the product, the attitude around it, all of those things were important, but the color is such an impactful influence in why people will choose a particular product or a particular environment. So it was a matter of education in the beginning. And I think what has happened over the years is that more and more people have now recognized, particularly companies and industries, whole industries, have recognized and acknowledged the importance of color within their product line, within their logo, within their brand imaging, within their environment. Color has an important is an important aspect in all of those. And so now when I talk about color and I say that I do color consulting, there are less people who say, oh, what does a color consultant do? I think there are more people who have an understanding of the importance of color and also in all the areas that I mentioned, and also that there are specialists that exist like myself and the Eiseman Center for Color Information and Training.
All right. If you could take us back to your childhood and share the fond memories with colors, when did you realize that you actually shared a bond with colors?
Well, that happened very early in my childhood. I always had an affinity for choosing color. I loved color. And I also had, and with children, this is really important, is to have the affirmation of adults around them who recognize what your talents are. And fortunately, I had a mom and a dad and an aunt who were very influential in helping me get along in my career because they understood that I did have this eye for color. And they encouraged it. They encouraged it from the standpoint of not just lip service and talking about it, but allowing me to use the colors in my room that I felt expressed myself, to choose the colors for my clothing, for whatever my choice was. And then eventually, when I became a young teenager, they would actually come to me for advice about color because they acknowledged that I had that special expertise. So that's a long answer to your question, but I think it's very, very important to encourage children, even if you don't see an apparent talent for color. I think it's important to encourage them to use color because it's a wonderful way of expressing yourself.
Yes.
Children often express themselves through color, and to encourage the use of color because that only increases their creativity.
So Viva Magenta is the 2023 Pantone's color of the year. How do
Yes.
you expect it to play out in the interior design and the apparel industry?
I think it's going to be a very important color because of the fact that we're in a place now where I think we acknowledge on a worldwide basis that people are looking for relief from all that we've been through the last few years. We need encouragement. We need to feel braver about the future. And red is a color that is widely understood. The red family is
Yes.
widely understood as a color that increases empowerment. Empowerment is different than power. Empowerment means that we instill this within ourselves. We look at a color and it makes us feel empowered. And that is exactly what Viva Magenta does. So really, we always look at the psychological implications of the color before we even think about the aesthetic value of a color. What is it going to say to people? How is it going to encourage them in moving forward? And we feel that Viva Magenta is exactly the right color for this time. And we feel that we're going to have, and we already are having, very positive recognition of that color.
So when I actually put this on Twitter that I was going to interview you today, a lot of followers asked me that they were really keen to know that how do you arrive at a conclusion when deciding the color of the ear? What is the process behind it? If you can explain it to our audience.
Well, the process is that we start well within the year before, and then we have a sense of what color we might be going for, what color family. But again, I have to reiterate that the overall feeling, the encouragement that comes from the color that I was talking about, we look at that first. What are we gathering from conversation, from what we're seeing online, from talking to other people who are in the field of color, people whose opinions we respect. And in addition to that, we then have to do a lot of homework on what is happening in the world of art. Is there a particular artist whose displays are being shown in various museums across the world? Again, we look at it from a worldwide perspective. Is there a special color that particular artist has used historically, or even if these are new artists, what colors are they gravitating to? We look at, of course, the world of fashion, because fashion designers are very well versed in the importance of color, and the world of beauty, naturally. The cosmetic world is very, very aware of what color direction we're going in. And so we look at those indicators as well. In addition to that, we look at the world of entertainment, very, very important, because movies and films are being streamed and shown all over the world. And we may very well see movies that are made in the US, in London, in your country certainly, has been a huge influence as well. And so there are millions of people who sit down and watch those films or stream those films. And if they see certain colors within the film, they will gravitate to that color. So we look at not the films that are out today, but what is coming out next year. Is there a particular director who has a favorite color that they're using? Or is this color being used as part of the storyline to promote that particular drama? Children's animated films are very, very important, because the graphic designers and the animators are such artists when it comes to choosing color, and they have a very good sense of the psychology of color and the meaning of color. So that's a field that we look into very closely. And of course, we look at other world events. We look at soccer, we look at Olympics. What is the home country going to be? What are the colors of the flag? Are they going to get a lot of attention? All of that gets filtered into it as well. And certainly the world of technology is super important. What new finishes are we seeing? What about the concept cars and the colors that are being used on those automobiles? That is the latest technology that we are seeing. And is that a color that's then going to filter down to a more affordable price point? Because not everybody can afford a high price car. What colors are going to be adapted by other companies? So it takes a lot of work and a lot of contact and information from other industries that we have to look at in order to come to that final decision. So it is not just a matter of aesthetics. Let's just choose a beautiful color. There's much more thought process that goes into it.
So there's like a jury that sits and decides mutually. It's a mutual decision that is taken.
It's not necessarily a jury. It is, we have a committee that we work with, and I have headed up that committee for a long time. and because a final decision has to be made. But I think the interesting thing is that when you're working with people who are very familiar with color and have worked with color for a long time, that the feelings are very mutual. It doesn't lead to huge arguments about, who is right, who is wrong, because we're all looking at that essential color that is really going to express that word again, the zeitgeist. And for this year, we felt that we were pretty much on target with Viva Magenta.
All right. I can spot a lot of books behind you. So, and I also know that you've been writing a lot of books on colors as well. So, how many books have you written so far? And what is the next big project or the book that you're actually working on?
Well, right now I have 10 books that are in publication. Most are still available through our website. As to another book, I'm fomenting some ideas right now. But really, most of my creativity is going into the classes that I can now teach again. We were on hiatus because of COVID, which really was very upsetting to me because I love to teach. I love to share my ideas with others. And we just did our first in-person class again here in Tucson. So I'm very excited about that. And right now, what we're working on is our next class, which is going to be held probably in June of this year, here in Tucson again, and also our online programs, because some people can't make the trip necessarily, but they will go online and take our training. And we're always updating that information, which takes a great deal of, again, research, time, homework, in order to make sure that our information is always up to date and significant. It helps those who are either already professionals and want validation for some of their ideas about color, because they may have a wonderful background in color, but they still need that validation that comes from attending a class, but also to keep up to date on the very latest things, because you could have taken color in school 15 years ago, and you may find that some of the ideas and concepts about that color have changed a little bit. So it's very important to stay on top of those trends as far as color is concerned.
All right. So my last question to you, it's pretty naive, and I'm damn sure that you've heard it tons of time and you are tired of hearing this, but what is your favorite color?
It's a good question, but it's a question that I don't give an answer to, because as a colorist, I can't have a favorite color. I have to be super objective about color, so that when a client comes to us and they need particular advice, whether it be branding or product or whatever the purpose, if I have a favorite color, it's a very natural inclination to want to use that favorite color. So you have to divorce, and I tell my students this all the time, you divorce your personal self from your private self, from your professional. Professional versus personal. Professional means you've got to keep a very, very open mind. And even in my own home, I've used a variety of colors because each expresses a different emotion. And I think it's important to get that emotional message into the color that we choose.
All right. Thank you, Lee. It was really wonderful having a conversation with you. And I hope to have more such conversations with you in the coming future.
That's very good. Very nice meeting you. And I hope we can do this again.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you. Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.